Hey coders, welcome back. This is the next video for our Mission to Mars project. By now your program should be able to run the game number 1, game number 2. So load up the rocket and launch into space. For today's video we're going to do the third game, which is helping the rocket fly safely through space while avoiding some obstacles. Now I don't think there's an asteroid belt between Earth and Mars, but anytime you're flying through space there's obstacles you may have to watch out for. So we're going to program our robot so the player's going to have to be able to maneuver around some rocks flying through space. Okay, what we want to do is start with this button number 3 here. Right now when you click on the 3, nothing happens. So let's add an event for that. So the program knows what to do when that sprite is clicked. And when that sprite is clicked, let's clear everything. And then let's broadcast a new message. And if you've done the last 2 videos, you should guess what this one's going to be. It's going to be a new message, start game 3. All right. Just like before, when we start game 3, we want to change the backdrop. We're going to do a new one for this one though. So click on backdrops and come to backdrops and let's add a new one. Because flying through space, the best thing to have for your background is this one here that says stars. So type in stars. We now have a starry backdrop. And come to our code. For the backdrop code, let's just duplicate. Oh no, let's do this. When it receives the message called start game 3, we're going to change the looks to the backdrop and switch the backdrop to stars. Okay, so if we hit the green flag and we click the 3, the backdrop works. Now we just need some other things to show up on the screen. Well, none of the current sprites are going to be what we use for this one. So let's add 2 more sprites. I know we've used this rocket before. We're going to use it again. Just because to me it's way easier just to add the sprites in again instead of having one sprite that has to manage all these different games. So come to size, let's do size 30 for this one, and let's set the rotation to 180 so that it's pointing to the right. So the way this game is going to work, the rocket's going to be over here and the rocks are going to be flying towards it, and the player's going to control the rocket with the mouse. Okay, so for the rocket there's going to be an event. So when it receives clear everything, we always need to have that one. We want it to hide because we don't want this to show up when it's not supposed to. And when it is supposed to show up, that's going to be game 3. So go into looks. When I receive game 3, we're going to show it. Now, so it's basically like hitting the green flag, except that this is going to be what triggers it. It triggers it's an event from the program, not from the player. Okay, so let's put a rocket over here. I've been trying to think of how I want to do this. This is what I'm going to do. We're going to create something called a variable here. So we have variables already in our program, right? If you look at the motion for the rocket, there's things down here that say X position and Y position. And right now, the X position is -207. If I move it over here, the X position is 85. Scratch has ways of keeping track of information about what's happening in your game. We're going to need to create our own for this game. Okay, so let's get rid of that. Come to variables, and we're going to call this one. Let's make a variable. You can use my variable, but if you ever have to use one more than one of these, you want to make sure it has a good name that you'll remember. So we're going to make one here, and we're going to call it rocks avoided. Okay, rocks avoided. We're going to leave it for all sprites, and then we're going to ignore this bottom one and hit OK. Let's have this rocket, when start game 3 is broadcasted, let's set that to 0, because right at the beginning of the game, rocks avoided is 0. And what's going to happen is every time the rocket goes past the ship, it's going to increase this by 1. And we'll get to that in a second. But we need our program to run in a loop, but we don't want to use a forever loop, because forever loops are tricky, except in programs where you're always hitting the green flag and the stop sign, green flag and the stop sign. Ours, we're only going to hit that green flag once. hopefully the player can do the whole game without having to ever restart it. So we don't want to do a forever loop here. What we want to do is a control statement, and we're going to do repeat until. So drag that over, and think about how many rocks you want your player to have to avoid. And let's start with the number 10. Okay. Nope. We're going to set rocks avoided to 0, and we're going to repeat. I forgot. We need to fill in this hexagon here with an operator. And we may actually have 2 rocks go at the same time. So instead of equals, let's grab this one here that says greater than. See how it's a hexagon shape too? And we're going to say 10. Now, we need the rocks avoided to be greater than 10. That's going to be the variable that goes up each time a rock goes past the ship safely. And so we need to fill this circle in here with rocks avoided. If you come down to variables again, there's a new oval here called rocks avoided. And if you drag that in here, it will work. So if we set rocks avoided to 10, and then if you, let's just click on this oval shape right here. It'll tell you that right now it's 0. Okay? And what we want to happen is, let's control the motion of the rocket first of all. So we want that to move to, now you could say go to the mouse position right here, mouse pointer. We don't want to do that though because, oh, I didn't do that. Let's put it in here real quick. Because then the rocket can go all over the screen. We don't want to do that. We want to just keep it on the left side of the screen. So that's going to be go to X, Y. X is going to be, let's say, -200. But Y is going to need to change because if the mouse goes up or the mouse goes down, we want the Y to go wherever the mouse does on the up and down. So come to sensing, and this one right here, mouse Y, will give us what we need. See, right now our mouse is off the bottom of the screen. Right now it's a little bit below. Right now it's a little bit above. So wherever the mouse is on your screen, the Scratch puts that information into this oval. So we're going to put that right here. Nope, we're going to put that right here. Okay, so repeat until rocks avoided is greater than 10. Right now, this will make it so our rocket always just kind of follows the mouse around. So I'm not clicking the mouse, just moving it all around. The rocket stays where it is. It just goes up and down to match where the mouse goes. That's what this statement here does. Which is pretty good. That's all we want to happen while it's avoiding the rocks. Okay, so now we need to add some rocks. So come to Scratch. No, come to Sprites. Type in rocks. And let's pick this one. That's way too big though. So let's shrink that down 40, something like that. Looks good. Our rocket's up here. The rock is going to have a little bit of code to fly across the screen. Now let's do our events. We want this to disappear anytime it says repeat everything. So that's under looks. We want it to hide. I'm going to go ahead and grab over the show one too because that's going to be our next one. When it receives, what's it going to receive to show up? It's going to receive start game 3 because that's what game this one is. When it receives start game 3, it's going to show. We need to pick where on the screen it's going to begin. I would like it to appear somewhere over on this side of the screen. If you have it appear in the same spot every time, that becomes a really boring game for the player. So we kind of want it over here on this side of the screen. We don't want it too close to the rocket or the player will think that's unfair that the rock just appears right here. So we want it to appear over here before it starts moving across the screen so that the player has time to get out of the way. So grab this, go to XY. We don't want to just do a random position because then it would appear too close to the rocket. But we want the X and Y's to be kind of random. So come to operators. And here you have one that says pick random 1 to 10. If you just click on this, it will generate a random number from 1 to 110, including the number 1 and including the number 10. See how the 10 came up? So for the X value, we want it to be kind of between here, which is about 110, and here, which is about 230. So change that to say 110 to 230. And if you click on that, you can see the numbers it generates are always in that range. Drag that to our X's, bring another one of these over here. For our Y's, the rock could be anywhere up here, which is about 180, to anywhere down here, which is about negative 100. We could just going to do negative 180 to 180. Okay, so now when we run this program, the rock will randomly start over there on the right side of the screen. Okay, and this one, we can have, what we're going to do is have it be in a loop. For start game 3, yeah, and let's do that. Okay, so we're gonna do a forever loop on this. No, let's not do a forever loop. Let's just do a repeat. I think we're gonna do a forever loop. Bring forever over here, and we'll find a way to stop it from flying later on. But we're gonna repeat forever, and to move to the left side of the screen, you're just gonna change the X each time by a negative number. So negative 10. The amount you change this on will determine how fast it looks across the screen. But to control that a little bit better, let's put in a weight in here, just a small weight, like 0.2. So now our rock is going to move across the screen. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's too slow. It's going to be way too easy to play that. So we can change that to 0.1, and it'll go twice as fast. And we can also increase the amount it moves on the X too. Okay? So there it's going to move across the screen. That's pretty good. We can adjust that as we go. We need to add something in here though, because once the rock gets stuck on the side of the screen, it doesn't ever move again because it keeps trying to move off the screen and Scratch doesn't let it. So let's stop that. And we need a check in here. Drag this one over here that says if, then, and Scratch knows where this rock is. So we need to check it like we did with the rock counter. Okay, let's do a less than here. Right now it's less than negative 250. So if it's less than negative 250, then we're going to start it over. Okay, so the way we're going to do that, let's duplicate this code right here. Bring that inside. And then now if what is less than negative 250 though? Well, that is under motion the X position. So if the X position of the rock is smaller than negative 250, so if it's way over here, then it's going to go to a random place, and then it shouldn't be less than that anymore. So it should only do that one time. Okay, let's run this code and see what happens as if game 3 started. Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah, that looks really good. Okay, now let's have the game now start keeping track of how many rocks we've avoided. So we'll know that the rocket safely avoided the rock if it resets to the right side of the screen. So we have a variable here called rocks avoided. Come to variables, and what we want to do is each time the rock resets, let's increase that by 1. So keep an eye right here. Oh, I didn't change this. That's supposed to say rocks avoided. Rocks avoided 1, rocks avoided 2, rocks avoided 3. Okay? And let's do one more thing in here for our rocks. Let's say if the rocket hits a rock, it's not necessarily the end of the game, but that it resets the counter. And so the player has to go keep playing until they get 10 rocks avoided in a row. So let's do a check in here. That's going to be an if. Let's see if the rock is touching the rocket. So that's going to be sensing. If touching the rocket, now remember this is, oh, I didn't rename this one yet. We need to rename this rocket ship. This is the game 3 rocket. So if the rock is touching game 3 rocket, let's reset our rocks avoided variable. So we're going to set rocks avoided to 0. Okay, let's connect that back together and see how we're going. Here's right now we're at rocks avoided 0, rocks avoided 1, rocks avoided 2, rocks avoided 3. Oh, no, we didn't avoid that one, so it reset to 0. See, if it hits the rock, it changes it back to 0. That'll work. Okay, so come back to our game 3 rocket. What'll happen as soon as this hits a number 10, the rocket will stop following the mouse. Okay. And you'll see that real quick. This is a good example why you may want to increase the speed of your rock. But we'll up the difficulty here in a second and watch. See how I'm moving the mouse now, but the rocket doesn't move? That means the player successfully beat this part of the game. So let's hit stop and think about what we want to happen when the player passes 10 rocks. And actually, let's change that to a 9. So you passed 10 rocks. It no longer hits that. What we want to do now is let's do a control statement, a repeat 10 times, and under motion, let's change the X by 40. So what should happen? Oh, So what should happen with that code is that the rocket will just look like it's flying off to the right side of the screen. And that just signifies to the player that you've won the game. So if we test this block of code right here, that works pretty well. And maybe we want to do it 11 times. Make it look a little bit more to the edge. So it'll look something like this. Alright, that's good enough. Now, we want, while that's happening, I could give you an extra challenge, which would be to make the rocks disappear or to make them stop moving while that's going on. For the sake of this project, because it's already kind of a long video and complicated, we're going to leave that alone. But what I do want to do is add a few more rocks to the game, because that will make it a lot more fun if it's a little bit more challenging. So I'm going to right click or control click. I'm going to duplicate our rocks here. And then I think 5 rocks is probably a good amount for the screen. And the cool thing is these all have the exact same code, so I don't have to do any more coding because we made the first one really good the way we wanted it. Okay, so click on 3. Here's our rocks. We've avoided 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, do you see what happened there though? We won the game so easily that way. So come back to our rocket. If we're going to have 5 rocks flying by, maybe we ought to set this to a higher number, like 30, something like that. So let's run it again. Game number 3. Watch the rocks avoided go by. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 10, 11, 10. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And, you know, basically, you're going to have 6 waves of rocks go by until you've successfully passed 30. Once you hit 30, then your rocket takes off and you've won this game. Okay, so a couple things we want to do. I don't know that we need this variable to be on the screen. Rocks avoided. Player doesn't need to know how many they've passed. They just need to know to keep playing until the rocket flies off the screen. And then when the rocket flies off the screen, then we can do a couple things. We want to broadcast, clear everything, and we want to broadcast, go back to the main screen. And what that should do when we run it is reset the game all the way back to this one, just like the end of game 1, game 2. Let's try it again. Player needs to keep playing this until they've successfully avoided enough rocks. When that happens, the rocket flies away, and then the game should reset. Now you know they have to beat 30 without hitting any, because if you hit 1, it resets at 0. Player will just figure that out on their own. Okay, that is the 3rd game of this project, and make sure you come back to do the next one, as the player has to arrive at the planet Mars. Thanks for watching.